and microspore formation. Here we'll discuss about megasporangia and megaspore formation. So as we know, the female reproductive part is called pistil and the sporangium is called megasporangium because it forms megaspore. Why mega means large spore, because female spores are larger than male spores, so that is why this is called megasporangium. And the structure where these spores are formed, this is called ovule. Ovule after fertilization gets converted into seed, and the sac where embryogenesis occurs, that is called embryo sac. So here we'll discuss about the structure. This is called a pistil, and pistil has three parts. The lower part is called ovary. It is the lower swollen pitcher like part that has ovule. The second stalk-like part is called style, that gives passage to the male gamete, and the upper part, that is the receptive spot, that is called stigma. So here if we discuss about this pistil, pistil is also called gynoecium. Gynoecium is consisting of a single pistil or may have more than one pistil. When they are having only one pistil, that is single pistil, that kind of gynoecium is called monocarpellary. When they have more than one pistil, this is called polycarpellary. So here these pistils may be fused or may not be. If these are fused, they are called syncarpous, and if they are not fused, free from each other, so that is called apocarpous. For example, multicarpellary, that means having more than one pistil and all together fused. So when they are fused together, that is called syncarpous, and this type of example is papaver. And here we have another example, multicarpellary with apocarpous pistil, that means free pistils are there, that is called Mecalia. So here these two examples are showing different kinds of gynoecium. Now if we talk about each pistil, so as we have discussed, it has three parts: stigma, style and ovary, and inside each ovary there is ovarian cavity. That ovarian cavity has locules, and in locules many ovules are present. Ovules may be few or more in number, that depends on the variety of plant. Now we'll discuss about the megasporangium, means ovule. The ovule structure is like this. Here we have a base that is called placenta, from where these ovules come out, and the ovule stalk is called funicle. The joining part is called hilum. This part is called hilum, and it has two outer coverings, an outer integument and an inner integument. So here the ovule is the small structure that is attached with the placenta. Placental arrangement may be of different types, means if placenta is attached with the base, that is called basal placentation. If it is attached with the axis, that is called axial placentation. If it is attached with the periphery, that is called parietal. And there are so many examples that you will learn in higher classes. So here we'll discuss about main parts. The funicle, that is the stalk from where these ovules are attached with the placenta, and the hilum. Hilum is the joining or the junction part where the ovule and funicle are joined together. Here this part is called hilum. Okay, then integuments, as we have discussed, two integuments are there, outer and inner integuments. These are the protective layers. Sometimes they may have only one integument. And now an opening is there, that is called micropyle. This is the small opening present at the tip of ovule from where pollen tube enters inside. So here you can see this is the micropyle, the opening. Now the callosal, and opposite to micropyle, that is the basal part of ovule, is called callosa. Here you can see this part is the callosa, that is also called callosal end. Now the nucellus is present. Inside this outer integument and inner integument, nucellus layer is present. Nucellus is a protective layer, that is a nutritious layer present around this embryo sac. So it is actually a nutritive layer that provides nourishment. Here I have shown you like this yellow part, it is outer side of that embryo sac, and it provides nourishment. Actually endosperms also get nourishment from this nucellus layer. So it is the mass of cell that is formed by two sets of chromosomes, so hence it is diploid, and it is inside integuments. It has abundant food reserve material, so it provides nourishment. Inside this you can see this is the embryo sac, This part is embryo sac. Here three cells are present near the callosal end, that is called, these are called antipodal cells, and three cells are present near micropyle, where one cell is egg that fuses with the male gamete, and two cells are protecting the egg, these are called synergids. And embryo sac is the outer covering, means the whole sac where these antipodal egg synergids are present, this is called embryo sac. And at center you can see this word is written, this is written as secondary nucleus. Secondary nucleus, actually this is called central cell, and it has two nuclei, this is called, these are called polar nuclei, and there are two male gametes come from the male body, one fuse with the egg and that forms zygote, and second fuses with the, this secondary nucleus means fuses with the, polar nuclei. So this we'll discuss later because that is called double fertilization. So here we have discussed about megasporangium, the gynoecium structure, then after that microsporangium structure, that is ovule, and all the layers and parts of ovules. So students, as we have discussed about megasporangium, now we'll discuss about megasporogenesis. Megasporogenesis, that is the process where megaspore mother cell does meiotic division. Which cell? Megaspore mother cell, that is also called MMC, and it does meiotic division, and this process is called megasporogenesis. And after this process it forms, means when MMC undergoes meiotic division, it forms four haploid megaspores. Here you can see in this diagram. So the megaspore mother cell has started the division. It is now diploid cell, and after that it forms two cells, 1, 2. And this structure is called megaspore dyad. And these two cells are haploid. It again divides and forms four cells, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And this type of structure is called megaspore tetrad. All these four cells are haploid here, but three of them get degenerated and only one, the last one cell is left. So hence this kind of development is called monosporic development, because only one spore is left after meiotic division. So what we have learned, that meiotic division started with the MMC, single megaspore mother cell, and it forms four cells, four haploid cells are formed, and then three of them get degenerated, only one is left. Okay, so only one megaspore is left. Now the left megaspore is developed as a female gametophyte. So the development of gametophyte is given here. So hence you can see the nucleus of that functional megaspore divides again mitotically. So there was only one nucleus formed by monospore. Now they divide mitotically and form two polar nuclei in this diagram. In first diagram you can see two nuclei are present. Then in second diagram you can see four nuclei are present. Then in third diagram here you can see 8 nuclei are present. So all these nuclei move to the opposite poles, and two more sequential division finally form 8 nucleated structure. Now this is the 8 nucleated embryo sac. Now all these nuclei have to arrange properly like this. So here 6 of them, means out of these 8 nuclei, 6 of them are surrounded by cell wall, and the remaining 2 are present at center. Okay, so 3 of them group together at micropylar end and they form egg apparatus. Here you can see the two synergids and one egg cell. These three cells are forming egg apparatus, where egg cell fused with the male gamete and forms zygote, and two synergids protect this egg cell. Now three cells at callosal end form antipodal cells. Here you can see opposite to this micropylar end, you can see three cells are present here. These are called antipodal cells. They are anti to the micropylar end. Now how many nuclei are left? Two. So these are present at center called polar nuclei, and they are present in one cell, and this cell is called central cell. So there are 7 cells, 3 where antipodal cells are present, 3 where 2 synergids and 1 egg is present. So total are 6. Now 1 is left, that forms central cell. You can see one more structure is given here, filiform apparatus. Filiform apparatus is very important. Filiform apparatus actually provides passage to the male gamete. It helps in identification of micropylar end. So hence we have understood that how embryo sac development is done by megasporangium, and now 8 nucleated 7-celled structure is formed, and now this is ready for fertilization. So students, as you know that in pre-fertilization events there are two main phenomena, gametogenesis and gamete transfer. Gametogenesis is discussed in the form of microsporogenesis and megasporogenesis. Now here we'll discuss about gamete transfer in the form of pollination. In angiospermic plant this is called pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. Anther is the male part and stigma is the female part. Basically, pollination is of three types: autogamy, geitonogamy, and xenogamy. So, autogamy and geitonogamy are the kinds of self-pollination, and xenogamy is cross-pollination. Autogamy is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of same flower. And flowers may be of two types that do not open, called cleistogamous flower, and which are exposed or open flower, these are called chasmogamous flowers. Cleistogamous flower which do not open, so that is why there is no chance of cross pollination. Before fertilization they never allow any other pollens to land on their stigma. For example, viola, for example oxalis, for example camelina. And chasmogamous flower where the anther and stigma are exposed, so they may give chance to cross pollination. Second type is geitonogamy, where the transfer of pollen grain occurs from anther to the stigma of different flower but from the same plant. So here technically we can say that geitonogamy is functionally a cross pollination but genetically a self pollination. Why? Because genetically it is similar. Genetically anther and stigma from the same plant. This is the reason. Okay, so now the third one is xenogamy. This is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of different plants flower. Here the flower is different and the plant is also different. So that means this is a truly cross pollination. Okay, now the agents of pollination means the medium or the creatures that help in pollination, that help in transfer of this anther to stigma. So this may include abiotic factors and biotic factor. Abiotic factors like water and wind can help in pollination, and biotic factors like some insects, butterfly, honey bee like insects, and also a large number of animals may help in pollination. So a large number of pollen grains are produced by plants, and by using these mediums, either abiotic or biotic medium, these pollens move and they reach to the female part. So abiotic mode of pollination, as most of the pollen grains are wasted during this transfer, so that is why more number of pollens are formed. So what we have discussed, agents of pollination either are abiotic or biotic, help pollen grains to reach to the stigma, but pollen grains are formed in large number because because during this transfer most of the pollen grains are wasted, so that is why they are formed in large number to compensate the loss. So here for example wind pollination is there, so that means wind will help the pollens to reach to the stigma. So the pollens must be light, non-sticky, winged, and these anthers should be well exposed, so wind can take them and they can easily land on the stigma with the help of wind. So these stigma may also be large and feathery to receive these pollens. For example, these kind of flowers are having one ovule, so they are arranged in as a particular kind of inflorescence, and this type of example where the stigma is large and feathery and the pollens are light and non-sticky, etc., and ovule is one, so these kind of flowers are present in corn, cotton, and date palm. Second, water pollination. In water pollination, that usually occurs in lower category of plant, for example in bryophytes, pteridophytes, and in algae. So here the pollen grains are protected by a mucilaginous covering. Why? Because of water they may get harmed because of high water amount. That moisture can harm their genetic material, so that is why they need a mucilaginous covering around them to protect that genetic material. So these are the plants where freshwater or marine water plants may be examples. Freshwater plant examples where water pollination occurs, that is Vallisneria and Hydrilla. And some marine plant examples are also there. They use water as a pollinating medium. For example, seagrass, that is Zostera. So basically we have seen that 30% plants use water as a pollinating agent. Okay, so no, we know that there are different kinds of pollinating agents. As we were discussing about wind and water as a pollinating agent, the flowers where wind and water are playing an important role to do the pollination. So the flowers produce a large number of pollen grains. Why? Because during the transfer by wind and water, the pollen grains are wasted. So that is why, to compensate the loss, the pollen grains are produced in large number. Second and most important thing, these flowers do not produce nectar. Why? Because nectar is produced as a reward in insect pollinating flower. But we know that here the pollinating agent is not insect. The pollinating agents are either wind or water. So that is why they do not need to produce nectar. Now, if the insect pollination occurs in flowers, so the flowers must be large, colorful, fragrant, rich in nectar. Colorful. Why? Large. Why? Because insects may reach to the stigma easily. Insect may take pollens easily. Colorful. Why? Because they have to attract these flowers. They should be easily seen and be attractive for the insects. And third, fragrant. Why? They must have fragrance to attract these insects. Rich in nectar. Why? Because as we discussed that nectar is a reward given back to these pollinators. And these pollens must be sticky and stigma must also be sticky. Why? Because sticky pollens can easily get attached with the legs and feathers of insects, and sticky stigma can easily receive these pollens. So other than this reward, some other rewards may also be given. Like nectar is the common reward because nectar and pollen grains used as food by insects, so that is why. And next, they can provide safe place for laying eggs also. Here are two examples like Amorphophallus and Yucca plant. These are very important students for 1 mark. This is the Amorphophallus flower. It is about 6 to 7 feet high and it has a proper safe place to lay eggs. And second example is Yucca plant. Here this is the Yucca moth and it lays egg on the top of this flower. So these two are the another rewards given to these pollinators. Now we'll discuss about a very important topic, that is outbreeding devices. As we know that there are self-pollination or cross-pollination. So if any plant is continuing self-pollination, that it may lead to inbreeding depression. Inbreeding depression means for many generation, if they are doing self-pollination, then they may not develop variants, they may not develop variation. So it will be very harmful and it will not be very easy for them to adapt with the changes in environment, because genetically every time they are having same genetic combination. So they have to allow cross pollination for variation and for adaptation. So various plant who are having this kind of mechanism to discourage self pollination and to encourage cross pollination, these methods are called outbreeding devices. So there are 4 methods. For example, the first one, the pollens are released before stigma or the stigma and pollen receptivity are not synchronized. So when the pollens are released before stigma, this is called protandry. If stigma is developed before pollen, this is called protogyny. So their maturity time is not same, so they cannot fuse together and by this process they can discourage self-pollination. Second method, anther and stigma are placed at different position. For example, stigma is at higher level and The pollens are present at very low level, so pollens cannot reach to stigma. So this is also a method by which they can discourage self-pollination. Third, inhibiting pollen germination in pistil. Sometimes in few plants, pistil release some special chemicals. By this chemical, they can show self-incompatibility. By this chemical, they can discourage self-pollination. They do not allow their own pollen. So this is also a method of discouraging self-pollination. The last one, production of unisexual flower. We know that there are the plants like papaya and cycas. In cycas, we know that there are no flowers. The plants are unisexual. But in angiospermic plant, the papaya is the example, where the plant is having either staminate flower or pistillate flower. So other opposite gender is not present. So it is very easy for them to discourage self-pollination and to do cross-pollination. So basically this interaction is called pollen pistil interaction. The pollen has ability to recognize the compatible pollens. By any method, they can easily identify whether this pollen is right or wrong, and they can initiate the post-pollination events. Post-pollination events like fertilization, and then after that embryogenesis. So what pollen has to do? Pollen has to produce pollen tubes through which it can allow its gametes to reach to the ovule, and through this germ pore, when pollen tube is developed, it facilitates the transfer of male gametes to the particular embryo sac.